HaKadosh Boker Tov, we're going to be continuing today on Daf Samech Vav 66a1. Yesterday we were talking about the entire concept about renting out the property of the goy in order that we would be able to do the Eruv. Okay, so now we're going to continue. And it says here like this, Tauba Nehardai. So Tauba Nehardai, so Bnei Narda, they were trying to, it was very difficult, this Gemara in the eyes of Nardai. And they said, Rabbi Yochanan, does Rabbi Yochanan actually say that you could rent out on Shabbat itself, you could rent out the property from the goy, and then it's going to be okay? Rabbi Yochanan says, Socher kime'arev dami, that one that's going to be socher, it's like he did an eruv. My love doesn't mean ma me'arev, just like if you're going to do an eruv, it has to be dami be'od yom, so to socher mi be'od yom. Which means, remember, what happened? What happened was the goy came back on Shabbat itself. Once the goy comes back on Shabbat, they had the question, can we rent it out on Shabbat or not? Do we say that when you're going to rent it out from the goy, it's considered that he's mevatel his reshut, he's annulling his own property, and therefore you're allowed to do that even on the Shabbat in itself? Or is it considered like you did an eruv? Now, when you do an eruv, you cannot do an eruv on Shabbat itself. You have to do an eruv on Erev Shabbat, okay? So the question is, it says, if you're going to rent it out, it's like you're doing an eruv. Doesn't that mean that just like the eruv has to be done on Erev Shabbat, so too here you have to rent it out from Erev Shabbat, and it doesn't help doing it on Shabbat itself? And so the Gemara, no. Ma me'arev, va'afilu pepachot mishaveh pruta. Just like me'arev, it's going to be, even if it's going to be less than a shaveh pruta. Af socher, pepachot mishaveh pruta. So too the socher is going to be less than a shaveh pruta. Okay? So one more time. We have the concept of, right, remember, this is going on yesterday's daf, because if we don't remember this, we're not going to get anything here. Right, yesterday's daf, what happened was that the goy came back on Shabbat, and therefore automatically he prohibited it upon us to do carry. So now what happens is, we had a question. On the Shabbat in itself, can you come and rent it out from the goy or not? So according to, right, Rabbi Yochanan, he said yes. So now we asked, how could it be? How does Rabbi Yochanan say you could rent it out on the Shabbat in itself, right? It says, socher kime'arev dami. If somebody rents it out, it's like he's doing an eruv. Isn't that mean that you just have to do the eruv during the day? So we answered, no. We're going to learn a few different halachot. Right here it says there's 3 different halachot that we could actually apply to. Ma me'arev afilu b'pachot mishaveh pruta. Just like if you're going to be me'arev, it's going to be even less than shaveh pruta. Which means when you come and you do an eruv chatzerot, even if the food is going to be less than a shaveh pruta, which is basically worthless, still it's going to be okay. Af socher, so too when you rent it out from the goy, it could be done with less than a shaveh pruta, which means you don't have to start putting hundreds of dollars for rent. You could rent it out for a mamash, pachot b'shaveh pruta. Number 2, ma me'arev afilu schiro l'kito, af socher afilu schiro l'kito. Just like by an eruv, you could do it even if there's another Jew that he is sechir velekito, schiro velekito. Schiro is somebody that works by him every single day of the year, or lekito is even for a certain amount of time. So if you remember, that was a story that we said about, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, where one goy didn't want to lend it out, didn't want to rent out his property at all. So what did they do? They had one Jew that befriended him, and then he asked him to borrow part of his land. He put things there. And then they went and they rented it out from the Jew instead of from the goy. They bypassed the goy.
No, they make him join the Arab. They don't rent it out from him. He joins the Arab.
Who's he?
The employer farmhand.
Yes, but what he's doing though is you're bypassing the goy.
Yes.
Because what you're doing is the goy didn't want to do it. So now what do? The Jew befriends the goy. He now becomes a sechiro velekito, which is again the person working by him. I don't know, you translate it as farmman, whatever you want to call it. Basically, Kito is somebody that picks the fruits for you. I don't know how you would literally want to call it, a farmman, whatever you want to call it. Or Schiro is somebody that works for him the entire year, right? And then you do it through him. You don't do it through the goy. You bypass the goy. Af socher, so to the socher. Also, when you rent it, that means just like the eruv, you could do it with the sechiro velekito. You don't need to do it with the original owner, with the goy. So too, you do the same thing with here. With sechiro, you could do the same thing.
The Kito is more of an independent contractor.
Yeah, the Kito is basically an independent contractor, but he's picking your fruits for you. It's like a sharecropper, something similar to like a sharecropper. Okay? So number 3, Uma me'arev, just like when you do an eruv, chamisha sheshuyim b'chatzer echad, echad me'arev lekulan. When you have 5 people in the same chatzer, one person does it on behalf of everybody. which means that that one person becomes a shaliach on behalf of everybody. So to socher nami, when you're renting it out, it's the same halacha, right? That you have 5 people, right, that are in the same chatzer. One person could rent it out for everybody, meaning you don't need all 5 participating in the rental, just like you don't need all 5 participating in the roof. One of them becomes a shaliach for all of them. So basically, these are the 3 different rules where we equate the concept of a socher and the concept of a me'arev. Me'arev is the one that's doing the roof, or socher, that you're renting out the property. These are the 3 rules, but not to do with that it has to be done on Erev Shabbat. Bish? Yeah? Very good. So by Rabbi Lazar comes and he asks the following question. Amar Bizera, says Bizera, Maita Yad Rabbi Lazar. Right? What was the question of Rabbi Lazar? Amar Rav Sheshat says, Gavr Rabba Rabbi Zera, Lo Yadama Tayad Rabbi Lazar. Says, what I don't understand. He says, right, what? Such a great person like Rabbi Zera doesn't know what the question was. Kakashle de Shmuel Rabbe. Yeah, the question of Shmuel is rabbi, the rabbi of Rabbi Lazar, as we're going to explain. The Amar Shmuel, but says Shmuel, Kol makom she'alsrin u'ma'arevin mevatelin. Right? It says in any single place where you have the people that are living together and they are causing the isur of carrying without an eruv. Now, if they want to do an eruv between them, it helps to do bitul reshut to do it, which means if I'm going to come and I'm going to now live in the same courtyard as Jean-Jacques, what happens is that I prohibit onto him, right? I come and I prohibit onto Jean-Jacques the carrying, right, of this inside of his field. So now what happens is that it helps for me to annul my reshut to Jean-Jacques, okay? And then that's it. We're in the middle of Daf Samech Vav Amud Aleph, 66 Amud Aleph. No, I don't have the picture yet. The picture is going to be with everyone living in one room.
From the bottom.
Right, we're 6 lines from the bottom. Okay, the picture is going to be in 2 lines. Okay, so basically what happens? Shmuel says, "Kol makom she'osrinu me'arevim mevatlin." Okay, any place where I'm going to prohibit upon another Jew in order to carry in that chatzer, so then I could be mevatel that the reshut, and then that's it, and it's all good. I annul my reshut to him, and now it's all good. Me'arevim ve'en osrin. They could make an eruv, right? But it doesn't cause the prohibition in the beginning. Or osrim ve'me'arevim, or it's going to cause the isur tiltul, but I'm not going to do the eruv, which means we couldn't have done an eruv, and mevatlin. So in these 2 cases, whether it was that we could make an eruv, but we're not going to prohibit one until the other, or we prohibit one until the other, but it doesn't help the eruv, in any of these 2 cases, it does not help the bitul, which means I cannot annul my property to you, and then you'll be able to carry without it. Kol makom, so now we're going to explain this exactly. What are we talking about exactly? So let's explain the general rules. Kol makom she'osrin me'arevim mevatlin. What is the case where you have, right? Well, I'm going to show you the picture now, so you understand what we're talking about.
I'm very confused.
Well, that's why now the Gemara is going to explain, because you were confused. The Gemara is going to explain what's going on. So go to the picture, go to the video,
Number?
so you could see. No, there's no. You want the actual picture.
Yeah, well, 230 something, 231 maybe.
No, 598.
Oh, you're using
The new picture book.
I don't have.
So fine. So look for 1 second
I
with
sent
the
it to
other
you
tablet.
twice.
No, but with the other tablet, look at me. You can't log on to the Zoom, Richard.
Oh, I suppose I can walk around.
Oh, okay, fine.
But
So
I
if you want-
sent it twice to you.
But it's okay. He sent it on the Daf Yomi, but it's okay.
No, but I sent it to privately.
Privately also. You're special. Okay, fine. But to join the Zoom for 1 second, you could see it right in front of your face. Basically this, look in the picture, look in the screen. Kegon bet chatzerot zu lifnum mizo. This is a case. You have 2 chatzerot, one inside of the other. This is the public domain. If everyone could see my cursor, you have, right? This would be the mavui, whatever you want to call it. Here you have 1 chatzer, and then another chatzer inside of the other chatzer. This chatzer is connected. And you have 2 houses in each chatzer. Okay? So it says like this. This is a case where they prohibit it and they're allowed to do an eruv. So the inner chatzer, this inner chatzer over here, if everyone could see again my cursor, the inner chatzer, which passes through the outer chatzer, right, in order to go out to the mavui, to the Reshut Rabim. In such a case, they are causing the isur of the tiltul in the outer one. Meaning these people here in the inner one are causing the prohibition in the outer one. Okay, so now if they wanted to do an eruv together, right, so then they would have to make an eruv, they would have to be mevatel, right, to the outer chatzer, their drisat regel in the outer chatzer. So in order for them to make an eruv with them, these people on the inner one would have to annul their drisat regel, which means their footpath in the outer one. And then they make an eruv, and now everything becomes kosher. You there? Yeah? One more time. Okay, we just got actually 2 new people coming in. So Yaakov, Alush, Bruchim Baim. So everyone again, one more time. Yeah, also Binyamin, also the same to you. Again, we are on Samech Vav Mudalef towards the bottom. Okay, we're talking about, we just mentioned a few general rules. So technically this is actually perfect because it's a new concept. So even if you missed a few lines, it's okay, right? The new concept is basically, what's going on is that we said 3 general rules. Kol makom she'osrinu me'arevin mevatlin. Anytime when you're going to prohibit, right, onto somebody else, they're walking. So then you're allowed to do an eruv. So you're allowed to be mevatel your reshut in order to make the eruv. The second general rule was, and the second and the third is the same thing, basically is that it's the same outcome, not the same case, right? But basically the case is that me'arevin ve'en osrin, or osrin ve'me'arevin. In a case where they do the eruv, but they do not cause, right, the isur, the prohibition of being metaltel, or in a case where they do prohibit they do cause the prohibition of isur, but they do not, they are not allowed to do the eruv. In such a case, they cannot do bitul reshut. They cannot annul their reshut. So now we're going to explain each one of these 3 general rules. So the first case is this picture that I have in front of me. If everyone now can see the picture in front of me, you have the inner courtyard with 2 houses, the outer courtyard with 2 houses. Obviously, the inner one have to pass through the outer one in order to get to the smavui or to the reshut rabim. Okay, so now, in such a case, the inner courtyard that's over here, they always have to walk through the outer courtyard. So in order for them to make an eruv, right, to the outer courtyard, they prohibit to the outer courtyard from carrying. So what are they, but they're allowed to do an eruv. So what are they allowed to do? They annul their outer courtyard permission in order to walk through the outer courtyard. And by doing so, by annulling it, now they can make an eruv together, and now there's no problem. Okay, so that's, what?
Say one more time.
One more time. This is the inner courtyard, outer courtyard, mavui, and the reshut rabim, the public domain. The inner courtyard always have to pass through the outer courtyard in order to get to the mavui. Now, the fact that they could go into the outer courtyard, they prohibit onto the outer courtyard to carry. They prohibit it on them because now other people have their permission, have permission.
They have to join.
So how are they doing it? Since they have the permission to go into the outer courtyard, they have to annul. Since they prohibit the outer courtyard from carrying without doing an eruv, but they're allowed to do an eruv, so therefore they have to annul. That means the inner courtyard are annulling their permission of the use to the outer courtyard. By annulling their permission of use to the outer courtyard, now they can make an eruv together, right? They could join together, and now everyone's allowed to carry everywhere.
How are they going to, if they annul, then they can't go in the outer courtyard?
No, because they did an eruv. If they don't annul, now they can't make an eruv. Because the outer people cannot make an eruv to them, because since the inner people have the right of way in their property, they cannot make an eruv together. So therefore, the inner people have to annul their property to the outer people. Now that the outer people have only jurisdiction in their field, and the inner people only have jurisdiction not in their field, in their courtyard, in each one in their courtyard, now they join together through an eruv, and now they're both permitted to carry everyone.
They have to make the eruv first.
Yes. Okay. Fine. So now, says the Gemara, okay? Now it says, Me'arevin, the second case, Me'arevin ve'en osrin and mevatzlin. What happens if they do the eruv, but they don't prohibit the passageway on the other one? They are not allowed to do mevatel. They could not annul their reshut. What's the case? Shte chatzerot upetech achad benehen.
Like in the drawing, exactly.
No, this case. This is picture number 600. Because this was what Yisrael Nochim. Okay, this is something else. This is Tosot. We're not doing Tosot. Next one, 600, right here. Yeah? You see over here, technically speaking, the inner courtyard also have a passage to the Mavui and the Reshut Rabim without going through the outer courtyard. But they also have another entrance directly towards the outer courtyard. So in the previous case, which was 598, the only way, the only passage of entrance and exit was through the outer courtyard. So automatically they had permission to go into the outer courtyard. Here, right, it's not mandatory because the inner courtyard don't need the outer courtyard at all. They could go directly to the Mavui and to the Rishut Rabim without using the outer courtyard. So therefore, if they wanted the two chatzerot to do an eruv together and to permit the tiltul from one to another, but they didn't do so, one chatzer is not prohibiting the tiltul on the other one, right? And therefore, one of them cannot annul his reshut to the other one. Everyone understood the case?
So basically, you don't have a bitul.
Exactly. Here, you don't have a bitul because basically the concept of a bitul would only help if I'm impeding on you from carrying in your reshut. Here, nobody's impeding on anybody because here, this inner courtyard has nothing to do with the outer courtyard. He does have an entrance, but he doesn't need them. Since he doesn't need them, he could always go through here. So therefore, these people could carry from within their courtyard. These people could carry from within their courtyard. They're not connected. They do have an entrance, but they don't need it. They don't need to use it. So therefore, one does not impede on the other. Since they don't impede on the other, it does not help the bitul reshut one another because each one can make an eruv here, this one by themselves, this one by themselves. They're allowed to carry within their own chatzerot, and each one does not prohibit the carrying another. So that's what it says here. Me'arevin ve'eno osrim. They are allowed to do an eruv between themselves, but they don't prohibit within each other. And mevatzlim, they cannot do an eruv. Kegon, what's the case? Shte chatzerot, two chatzerot, u'petechacha benehen, one entrance between them. Okay? The next case, okay? Osrin ve'en me'arevin, right? What happens now if you're going to prohibit it? Oh, there's already a mubet. Right? What happens if you're going to prohibit it? Right? Bad, you cannot do a eruv, em mevatzlim. Latuim, what is that coming to include? Lav le'atui nochri. Are we not talking about there was a nochri, which means one of these houses is a goy, right? So therefore, what happens is when you have two Israelis, they prohibit on themselves to be metaltel in the chatzer, so they cannot come and do an eruv because of the goy, which means if it's only Jews, so just make an eruv. But if you have a goy, an eruv doesn't help, right? Because you have to actually rent out the property from the goy. So therefore, in that case, right, that's the case of osrin. They do prohibit it, but en me'arvin, they're not allowed to do an eruv, and therefore they cannot do the bitul. We're talking about that there was a goy there amongst the Jews. So if there's a goy there amongst the Jews, it comes out, and now it's prohibited upon them to do an eruv unless they rent from him the possession, and therefore they cannot do bitul reshut. Okay? So therefore he comes and he says, but this is against Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan said, what's the big deal? Even if you have the two Jews there, right? Even if the goy is there, what's the problem? Do bitul reshut, annul one Jew to another Jew, annul your reshut, and now that's it. And then you don't even have to do anything. Because remember, according to the halacha, we said, if there was only one goy and one Jew, you don't need to do anything. It's only if there's two Jews, then now you have to make the eruv and do all these things. But if one Jew annuls his property to the other Jew, it automatically goes back to the first case, which is one goy, one Jew. You don't have to do anything. So this is against Rabbi Yochanan. So says the Gemara, so now if this goy would have come on yesterday, because remember, this is the entire daf of yesterday that we're connecting to. We started today's daf by saying that what happens if the goy arrived on Shabbat in itself?
Are you on base already?
No, I'm going to be on base in 1 second. Yeah? So he says, if you're going to be, if right now the goy came yesterday from Erev Shabbat, rent it from him from yesterday. But here he arrived on Shabbat itself. And then we said it was good that he rented from him on the Shabbat in itself. Now we're on a mubet. Samech Vav mubet, 66b. Okay? Elalav rather. De'ata b'Shabbat. He came on Shabbat. The Ketani, and we learned, Osrim ve'em me'arevin, right? Em mevatzlim. Shema mina. This is not like Rabbi Yochanan, which means this is a stira against Rabbi Yochanan that you could not annul your reshut, right? Or you could not come and rent it up from the goy, and it doesn't help. So the entire thing of this case of the goy does not actually help. Okay, fine. So now we're going to go back to the words of Shemuel. So we actually left off with a question. Shema mina. This is actually a good stira against Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, basically it wouldn't help to rent it out from the goy on the actual same Shabbat in itself. Amar of Yosef says of Yosef. Okay, second line on Samech Vav Bet, 66b, second line. Amar of Yosef, Lo Shmiya li Shmata. I didn't hear the Smemra of Shmuel. I didn't hear the sprite of Shmuel. Amar le Abai says, Atamart Nihalan. You did say it in front of us. Remember that Rav Yosef forgot his learning. So his students would remind him. So it says, V'ahada Amart Nihalan, and you said it to do with this. The Amar Shmuel says, Em bitul reshut mi chatzer lechatzer. It does not help bitul reshut from one chatzer to another chatzer. Ve'em bitul reshut bechurba, or it doesn't help in a churba, right? Which means this is this picture. You with me? Again, bitul reshut bechurba. You have in between two houses, you have a churba, a destroyed house. If you want to call it a haunted house, yeah. So basically, in a house which is destroyed in between two houses, it does not help. You don't have a picture, Richard? 601, picture 601 in the...
I don't have the...
I sent it twice
The
already.
ruins.
3 times I sent it.
Ruins. Okay? So you told us, when did Shmuel say these words? That's only going to be when you have 2 chatzerot and 1 entrance between them. But if it's going to be one inside of the other one, the fact that they are osir, it is mevatel. So we're going back again to the same thing. I'm going back. Again, this is this picture. When are these words? When did Shmuel say that there's no bitul reshu from one to another? Lo amran shte chatzerot, 2 chatzerot and 1 entrance between them. However, though, when it's going to be zolif nimizo, which is this case, zolif nimizo, one inside of the other one, mevatlin, you are allowed to mevatel. Okay? So says the Gemara, Amalei, he says of Yosef to Abaye. Okay? This is again the same pictures we had above, zolif nimizo. So it comes and he says, right, Ana amina mishua de Shmuel achi. Says of Yosef, no, I said in the name of Shmuel like this. Shmuel says, En lanu be'Eruvin ela ki lishon mishnatenu. We only have in Eruvin like the lashon of our Mishnah, anshe chatzer velo anshe chatzerot, which means only if the same people from the same chatzer, but not people from different chatzerot in Rabin, which is in public, right? Again, it's a form of plural, okay? So therefore, it's mashma that en bnei chatzer echat yicholim levatel reshutam to another bnei chatzer, meaning people could annul the same their property in the same chatzer, but not to another chatzer. So Amalei, he said, no, when you told us this, you told it to us on this, that the mavui is like to chatzerot, just like a chatzer is to the batim, which means, just like, right, to do the mavui, which is you could permit tiltul b'Shabbat through a lechi and a korah, through a side post and the top post, the beam on the top. It's not called a mavui unless you have 2 chatzerot which are open to it, and 2 houses in each chatzer, right? So too Shmuel comes and he says that was the lechot of Eiruvin, but be'emet lashon mishnah to do with bitul reshut is anshe chatzer lashon yachid is not dafka. It could be lav dafka. It's not specifically an individual. It could also be plural, which means that one chatzer can annul their field to another chatzer, and there's no problem whatsoever. Okay? Fine. Going back. Gufar Shmuel says, right? Bitul reshut mechatzer lechatzer. You cannot come and annul from one chatzer to another chatzer. Then bitul reshut bechorban. It doesn't help in a chorban, a destroyed place house as well. Rabbi Yochanan says there is bitul reshut from one chatzer to another chatzer, and there is bitul reshut in a churba. Utzricha, you need both cases. You need to do with the churba, which is the ruins, and you need the case of the one chatzer to another chatzer. Why do you need both cases? If it only told it from one courtyard to another courtyard, this is when Shmuel said this, that each one you're using it, each chatzer, they have their own individual usage. However, though in a churba, in a destroyed house, between 2 houses, that each one is used for both houses, right? I would say that you could serve Yochanan. And if it was only stated to do with the ruins, only in this case, Rabbi Yochanan said that, but in the other case of 2 from one chatzer to another chatzer, Shmuel maybe he agrees to Shmuel. Tzricha, that's why you need both cases. Amar Abaye says, Damar Shmuel, that was Shmuel says, Em bitul reshut mechatzer lechatzer. It does not help bitul reshut from one chatzer to another chatzer. Lo amran, what are we talking about? B'shtei chatzerot, if there's going to be 2 chatzerot, u'peter chacha benehen. and there's going to be one petach inside of them, one entrance between them. But when two chatzerot, one inside of the other one, again, we're always going back to the same story. This is the one inside of the other one. The other case was this case, where you had, right, two entrances. Now we're talking about one inside of the other one, which means that there's only one entrance for the inner one. Okay? Rava comes and he argues, and he says, no, in this case, right, two chatzerot, one inside of another one, right, says Rava, sometimes you could annul your reshut, and sometimes you can't. Ketzad, what's the case? If they put the eruv in the outer courtyard, in this one right over here, okay? Right? What happened is that what happens right now, if the two chatzirot, they put their eruv in the outer one, and one of the dayanim, right, whether from the inside or the outer one, he did not make an eruv with everybody else. So now both the chatzirot become prohibited. Now, if they put their eruv in the inner one, look, this is this picture, 603. Right? They put the eruv in the outer one. Right? Right? And what happened was, whether it doesn't matter the inner one or the outer one, so this is this picture. The eruv is in the outer courtyard. Remember, there's only one entrance. One entrance. This inner courtyard cannot get to the outer courtyard, to the mavui, without going through the outer courtyard. So the eruv, they placed it in one of these houses. Let's say in this house. Everybody put in this house. This guy over here did not make an eruv, which is in the inner one, or this guy over here in the outer one did not make the eruv. Everybody else put their eruv, but everyone agrees that it was done in the outer courtyard. So it was done in the outer courtyard, but one of the inner ones or one of the outer ones forgot to put their eruv.
Well, you have two pictures there instead of one.
Because in this picture, the inner one, for one of the inner ones forgot to put the eruv in the outer one, and in this picture, one of the outer ones forgot to put the eruv in the outer one. But both cases, the eruv was placed in the outer courtyard, and everybody else did put the eruv except for one person. That's the Gemara. The Gemara says, Rava says, sometimes v'latzim, sometimes not. If they put the eruv in the outer one, and one of the inner ones or one of the outer ones did not make the eruv, both of them are prohibited. Shtehen asurot. Okay? Both of them are prohibited to carry. Natznu eruvam b'pnimit, but now if they put the eruv on the inner one, so this is this picture now. Everyone put their eruv in the inner courtyard. Okay? Now again, somebody forgot, now it says here, only somebody of the inner courtyard forgot to put their eruv, right? Shtehen asurot, right? Both of them are going to be prohibited. However, though, if one of the outer ones forgot, that's over here, one of the outer ones forgot and he didn't put it in the inner one, right? All the inner people are going to be permitted through this guy coming in and annulling his reshut. He's allowed to annul his reshut, and by doing that, everybody else is going to be permitted. But the outer one is going to be prohibited.
The person who annulled, he can't carry nothing. Somebody has carried for him.
Exactly, because for him it stays prohibited. This guy stays prohibited, but everybody here stays permitted because he annulled his reshut.
The other way around, he can't do it?
No, it has to be this case. Because in this case, how's he going to be mevatel his reshut? The eruv is in his chatzer. So it doesn't help for him to annul his property because the eruv is in the inner one. Okay, next. Okay, natnu eruvam b'chitzona. If they place the eruv in the outer one and they forgot whether it was the inner one or the outer one and they didn't do it, both of them are going to be prohibited. But the inner one, he's going to annul it to who? If he's going to annul it to the inner ones, the eruv is not by them. If he's going to annul it to the outer one, it doesn't help from one chatzer to another chatzer, from one courtyard to another courtyard. Remember, the outer courtyard never need to go to the inner courtyard. It's only the inner courtyard that have to pass through the outer courtyard to get out. So therefore, it doesn't help for them to come and start annulling their properties. Okay? But let's go the other way around. The outer person, I'm going back to this picture. The outer person over here, who's he going to annul it to? If he's going to annul it to the outer people, you have the inner ones, which are going to prohibit to him. If he's going to annul it to the inner people, right? And bitul reshut mechatzer lechatzer, it's not going to help him. So that's why he actually stays prohibited. However, though, if it stays in the inner one over here, here's the eruv, okay? And one of the inner ones forgot, both of them are prohibited, because who's the inner one going to annul it to him? If he's going to annul it to the inner people, right, you have the outer people, which are going to prohibit. If he's going to annul it to the outer people, there's no bitul reshut from one property to another property. Samach Zayin Amud Aleph, 67a1. Shachach echad min hachitzona, but if one of the outer people forgot, which is this case, right, and he didn't do an eruv, vaday pnimi mutar, for sure the inner ones are going to be permitted. Te'achada dasha mishtamsha, because the bnei chatzer, the inner ones, they could close the door here, right? That's achada dasha mishtamsha. Let me just see if that's this picture. No.
How are they going to leave if they close the door?
No, but during the time when they actually close the door, they're allowed to close the door, and they could stop the outer people using their property. Meaning, remember one more time, the inner people, they don't need to lend their property to the outer people. The outer property have no rights going into the inner property. Okay?
Yep.
Fine. So Amalei, right? V'chitzona surah, and therefore the outer one is going to be prohibited. Amalei Ravuna b'Rishul Rava says Rishul Rava, if one of the inner ones forgot, and they didn't forget it, amai shtein asurot. Why are both of them going to be asur? Livatel bar pnimit. Why don't we just say it's going to be annulled to the inner ones? Lebnei pnimit, v'teti chitzona, v'tishrei badayu, and then the outer one should come and permit the inner one. Okay? Which means, what's happening here? Now, even if one of the inner ones forgot, so again, not this picture, we're talking with this one. The inner one, he did not do the eruv. Remember, that's yellow. Lo irev, he didn't do the eruv. So the one of the inner ones forgot, right? Velo irev, and he didn't do it. Amai shten asurot. Why is everyone going to be asur in this case? Livatil bir par mipnimit. This one that he forgot, he should be mivatel as reshut to the other inner ones. Okay, he should be mivatel as reshut to the other inner ones. And once he's going to be mivatel as reshut to the other inner ones, teti chitzonav tishrei ba'adayu. Right? What's happening is that now the outer one should come and permit it. Why? But since he was mivatel as reshut, okay, it should be mimela not only to the inner ones but also to the outer ones, right? Why? Because now, since anyway the eruv is over here, so now they're all connected to this house, to this eruv. Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara, Kiman. Who's this going like? Rabbi Eliezer, like Rabbi Eliezer. Ta'amar, but he says, En tzarich levatel, you do not have to be mevatel reshut l'chol echad ve'echad. You don't have to be mevatel the reshut to every single individual. Meaning, according to him, when you're annulling your property, you don't have to be annul your property to every single person. To one person, it's already enough. Okay, l'Rabbanan, but according to the rabbis, that they do say that you have to be mevatel l'chol echad ve'echad. What are you going to do? Yeah? Fine. Rav Chasta v'Rav Sheshat kipa ge'ad b'de adadi. Rav Chasta and Rav Sheshat, we're on the two dots. Remember that today we're going to go continue until the end of the Amud, right? So that way we're going ahead for Shabbat. Okay, today's Wednesday, right? Every day we remember Shabbat. Yeah, Rav Chasta and Rav Sheshat kipa ge'ad b'de adadi. Rav Chasta and Rav Sheshat, when they used to greet each other, Rav Chasta martean sivatem imatrei de Rav Sheshat. He used to come and his lips were trembling of fear because of the bikiyut of Rav Sheshat in the words of the Tanaim. Okay? So therefore, right, it says, but Rav Sheshat, the other way around, his entire body was trembling of fear because of the sharpness of Rav Chasta, that he was very, very deep. So each one was fearful of the other one, but one was more Sinai because of his bikiyut, right, his, vast knowledge, and the other one because of his charifut, because of his analytical abilities. Thank you very much. Okay? So it says the Gemara, Rav Chasta Rav Sheshat. Rav Chasta asked from Rav Sheshat, Shne batim mishne tzidei reshut rabim. When you have two houses on two different parts of reshut rabim, ubao nochri mikifu mechitza b'Shabbat. There's this case. The next picture, picture 606. Okay, two houses on two sides of the reshut rabim, and then the goyim come. Yes, that picture, right? But we actually see the picture of the goyim actually putting it on Shabbat. That they're making the walls on Shabbat. So they put the walls on Shabbat. Why are they doing this? I have no idea, but the goyim came and they did this. Ma'u, what's the halacha? Now can they come and can one of them even batel his reshut in order to permit within this new chatzer or not? So according to the mandana that says you cannot annul from one reshut to another reshut, for sure there's no questions. Hashta, but now the by Eruvin Etmol, that they're going to make an Eruv from yesterday, Matsu Me'arve, they could make an Eruv. Amarta, you're going to tell me in Bitul Rishum Chatzel Chatzel that there's no Bitul from one Rishut to another. Hacha, but here the by Eruvin, they could have made an Eruv from yesterday. Lo Matsu Me'arve, right? That even if they would have wanted to, they couldn't have done so, which means Lo Kol Sheken shouldn't be more so. Which means here there's a special deen. Remember, since they're on two sides of the Rishut Rabim, even if they wanted to make an Eruv between them, it doesn't help. Because an Eruv does not help on two different sides of Rishut Rabim. So if it does not help if Bitul Rishut does not help from Chatzer to Chatzer, Kosh can hear that even if they wanted to make an Eruv, that it doesn't help. So Kiti Bailecha, so when's the question? Only according to the Manamar that there is Bitul Rishut Chatzer Chatzer. That you could annul from one Chatzer to another Chatzer. The Baal Eruvin tomorrow, but if you're going to tell me that they're going to make a Eruv from yesterday, Matsu Me'arve, they could have done it, so therefore so too, they could be Batel, the Rishut also, but in our case, that they cannot make a Eruv from yesterday, they can't be Batel, or maybe there's no difference between them. Amalei, Rav Sheshat answers, you cannot be Batel the Rishut. Okay? So, Umet Nochri Ben Shabbat. What happens now if they're living, right, with the Goy? Okay, and the Goy died in the middle of the Shabbat. What's halacha? Since he died, and now his inheritors still do not come to live there, so there's no Goy there. So now, technically speaking, this should be permitted for them to come and start carrying the Chatzet. So Aliba de Manamar Sochrin, according to Manamar, that you have to actually rent it out, and you're allowed to do it in the middle of the Shabbat, which is Rabbi Yochanan, Lo Tibay Lechatzon. A question, Hashta Tartev Din Chadam Baye. If right now you could do two takanot together, which is basically to rent out the reshut plus to annul your reshut. If you could do two, so for sure you could do one. So when is the question? According to the Mandamar, that you're not allowed to rent it out in the middle of the Shabbat. And you can't do two things, but maybe you could do one thing. Maybe there's no difference. Amar le Rav Sheshat answered, Ani Omer, I say, mivatlin. The Amnuna says mivatlin. According to me, you could do both. Right? You could rent it out, and therefore you could annul it as well, no problem. And Rav Amnuna comes and he says, no, you're not allowed to do it. So there's machloka between Rav Sheshat and Rav Amnuna. Okay, Amar Rav Yila Mashua says in Mashua, Nochli yeshlo petach, right? If a goy has a petach of arbat tfachim and arbat tfachim outside, right? That's the next picture, 607. So the goy, again, all the rest are Jews, and here the goy has an entrance of 4 by 4 tfachim, 32 centimeters square, right here, to go to the outside. Lebikat, to a valley.
Is he a rat or?
I don't know. So it says over here it says by 32 centimeters squared, you could get out. It says, obviously,
there
there's
is 4 by 4 centimeter.
No, 4 tfachim. Each tefach is 8 centimeters. So 32 centimeters squared. Well, 30, let's say 30 is a ruler. You could squeeze out. I'm saying.
Depends how big you are.
What are you looking at me for?
No, I'm just.
Yeah. No, but you could get out. There, dochak, you could get out. Yeah, you could get out.
That is personal.
That's very personal. It's true. But you could get out.
He said whatever your head can go through, your body could go through.
Oh, okay, that's good then. Very nice. Okay.
You could squeeze in.
Very good. So it says over here. So afilu machnis umotzi. So even if you're going to be motzi or machnis umotzi, even if you're going in and out through with camels and everything the entire day through the mavui, the fact that the goy has an entrance or an exit, whichever one you call it, to the outside, he doesn't prohibit on everybody else. My tama, what's reasoning? The pitcha de miachel was the petach ha'ikari in his eyes, right? Which is the petach to the bika, is much better because sometimes it's muruvach yoter. So it's kilu that he's removing himself from the regular courtyard over here, if you see my cursor. So basically he's removing himself. That means even though here he's coming in and out with caravans and camels and everything that you want, he doesn't prohibit on anybody else to carry within the mavui. No problem. So so we ask the question, patuach la karpaf mau. Once halakha, it's going to be open up to a karpaf. Remember, the karpaf was a storage place for wood. So here he's got this 4 by 4 tfachim open to a karpaf. What's halakha? Do we say the same thing or not? Which means that it's easier for him to get in and out of the kapaf or not. He says the name of Ulpana, the Shema Talmud, the name of the learning. He says, 67b. Afilu patuach lekarpaf, even if it's going to be open to a karpaf, which means that he's not going to prohibit onto the mavui, because also it's much better than going into the mavui, and therefore it's better for him to go inside and outside of the karpaf. So therefore, even though again he's using this for big things, he has an entrance here, and that in itself actually saves him. Okay, and with this we actually finish again Amud Aleph. So Bezrat Hashem, tomorrow we can